Ted Farron was well-known name in Windsor for decades as a businessman and even more so for the man who owned it. Farron was a butcher who had a shop near the corner of Cabana Road and Dougal Avenue. Farron died last week at Hospice of Windsor, Essex. It was one of many local organizations he played a key role in supporting over his 83 years. To tell us more, we're joined by one of Farron's close friends who worked closely with him, John Fairley. Thanks for coming in.
Hi, how are you?
How are you doing with the news?
Well, it was tough. I had visited Ted a couple times at hospice, and of course when he was at home with Michelle and everything. And yeah, it's just tough when you have people that have invested in our community and shown us the way of how to do what they did. I guess getting older, we don't live forever, and when the Queen died, everyone realizes that the Queen won't live forever. And but losing Ted, I think, was a lot because as the stories have come out, how much he was involved in, graciously, quietly, and then all in Ted. And when you were part of the all in Ted, it was a great thing to be a part of.
I remember when I met him, I thought, this is such a very happy man. He always was full of energy. What were these final visits like with him?
Well, at the condo, it was a little bit easier to talk to and everything. But then obviously at hospice was a different Ted. It was just talking and getting reaction, visiting with him and getting that smile and those big open eyes that he'd look at. But you're easily when you left, you knew that there was the time he'd come up to you, hey, Johnny, I got the da-da-da-da, and he'd shake your hand. I mean, when people talk about Ted Farron, when you got a handshake from Ted Farron, even like when he was on the Board of Governors at the college with us, he'd love being on the stage to drape give the lyre pipe and everything and shake the hands of those students. It was just so invested in kids and students and things like that. And that bubbled over to so many things he was involved in. I mean, we didn't know anything. Well, I want to help you. Johnny, I need you to help me with this Camp Brumball. I said, a what? I had no idea, but here it's a camp that's been going on for years that kids from less economic strengths as other people, and they went out to learn to fish, and they all got bikes, and it was all run by cops, police, and they got training things, soft skills, cops are your friends, and bonding and stuff. Yeah. And he said, we were going to do this, all in, Ted,
Yeah. I have a piece of tape for you to hear. We were talking about this before you came in the studio, so this might be interesting to you. So we have a piece of tape here I want to play. It's a cooking segment that Ted Farron did for CBC Television Channel 9. This first aired in the summer of 1999.
Now there's a right way and a wrong way to cut chicken breasts. So this is the way we're going to cut them. We're going to cut them across the grain in nice pieces. See how they're just falling apart? Nice little bite-sized pieces. And a half a breast is usually enough for each person. So we'll put a half a breast on each plate. Boy, I can't wait to try this. Now, isn't that beautiful?
What do you think when you hear his voice?
Well, wow. I mean, and that was it. I mean, I don't know what the sales per square foot in that butcher shop at the corner of Dougal and Cabana was, but everybody was there.
What do you think it was about that shop?
It was it was Ted. And he'd come in there, and I'd go with my parents, or probably more my mother than that. I've got to go to Ted, so I'd drive her over, or whatever. And he'd come out, hey, Lois, how are you? He was just all pumped up, and it was. So how did it go with the spiraled ham? And it was all good, And how was the turkey? Did you try this? I mean, he sold like he never. But he was also there at 4 a.m. getting the meat ready and tying and cutting and butchering. It's not like he'd come out with blood on his hands. I mean, you never saw someone all in. And then when he left for the day, he was all in on anything else he did, whether it was the medical school and working with the University of Windsor and doing, like he had a thing that some Christmas he went down to our Center for the Arts and he cooked a whole bunch of turkeys because with some youth group, a youth center on Wyandotte Street, he wanted to make sure he went and cooked turkeys at our place just because he had to do it. I mean, he had the energy, he had to do it. I mean, to hear that, I mean, it was more tips than I'm sure everyone ever had. Everyone has a tip from Ted in some capacity.
He was the chair of the Board of Governors at St. Clair College for about 11 years, and that's where you worked closely with him. I'm
Yeah.
wondering what side of him you saw that maybe we didn't know about him when he was in that role.
You would never think of Ted sometime because he was a street guy, if you know what I mean. But he got it. He understood what the role of education was. He appreciated us at the college. He appreciated the university. He wanted that medical school. He talked about that medical school. So he wasn't just a butcher. Here's the butcher or the boxer guy. He wanted to support anything that we were doing with our president in strategic directions. We got us the Toldo Center that opened up for medical. We had the Sportsplex that opened, so all of the athletic stuff that started. But again, he would come in my office and, hey, before the Board of Governors, it was like a wrestler. His arms would be going, and so what's going on? I mean, what do I need to know? You know what I mean? And that's the enthusiasm Ted had, and it bubbled over for everything that he touched.
Including being an advocate for healthcare. He has some big legacies in our area. For people who are less familiar, can you explain how important his leadership was in that regard?
I think the hardest thing is to talk about is the hospice. When I started that hospice face-to-face campaign, if you remember, it was for the hospice village, it was called. It wasn't even what it's morphed into now. And we started it, and I had to go to people I knew. I just said, hey, we're doing this thing. We're going to raise money for this hospice. On Empress, he was all in, and Tony Total Sr., and all these people that were working at our hospice. And so we just raised money, and we said we go to 500 people, go to 10 people for $10. And what was Ted? Once a year, him and Michelle had a barbecue every year in front of his place. And it wasn't, Jim that works for me or so-and-so works for you or whatever. It was him behind the thing making coney dogs and hot dogs and hamburgers, and they're good quality. And that was it, raising money every year, and every year gave us a check for Michelle and him. So it was all in. Anything Ted did was all in. And you had to get out of the way, or you got on board, because that's what it is. And then to think that the hospice was his home for the last couple of months. So it kind of goes all in, right? I mean, it goes full circle.
What's something about Ted Farron that you want people to know about him as we wrap up and remember him?
I think just to invest in people like he did to all of us. Bring somebody along for the ride. You can't do it all alone. He knew that he had to bring other people on board, so it was a lot of conversation. It was a lot, hey, I got this idea, or we're working on this, I need your help. So reach out and touch, and that's what Ted did, and got us all involved.
You might have answered this already, but I'm thinking when you close your eyes and you think of Ted and how you remember him, is it the energy? Is that how you're going to think of him?
It's the energy and that handshake. When he shook that hand, and he was just knew you were connected, and the energy of Ted, and many people in the community have it, but he was very special, and his talk equaled his walk.
That's important. Thanks, John.
Thank you.